those relationships. Kind of thingy already for us to build up. I really like in my personal life, and thanks for coming on. We have had quite a series of Year 20 gatherings, which some of you have been to. They've been much more of an informal kind of nature. We've always really wanted to have a more formal discussion event, and what could be better than the wicked challenges around the Horizon report. So I know you probably have all voluntarily done your homework and downloaded the Horizon 2014 K-12 Horizon report. But of course, it's fantastic having Larry Johnson, the NMC CEO, with us, which is what has made today really come together. So thanks for coming, Larry. He's got some challenging stuff to give to us in a moment. Just wanted to also say thank you to the State Library, for letting us use this fantastic space. For members of the library, past and present, it's fantastic to have your support. And also for Educorp, who sponsored our catering this afternoon. And I'm sure they'll be keen to chat about their upcoming product if you want to chat to them afterwards. So I guess, you know, this sort of thing I've sort of explained there, we want to have some discussions around those wicked challenges that's in the Horizon report. But even beyond that, I guess the purpose of getting together is just very much to see what happens when you get these particular people in a room together, really. The different backgrounds, experiences in all sorts of different facets of especially K-12 education. It's kind of, for me, the most exciting thing, actually. We'll see what comes out. We've got some sort of planned topics for our discussion where we'll spend a bit of time where you can actually start putting some ideas together and then come back more towards the end to share some of that kind of stuff. But really, it's just having these particular people for coming along. So that's all that I wanted to say at the start. We did have plans, hopes for our Google Plus Hangout, so other people could actually just dial in and listen and that kind of thing as well. I have no real idea. We do have a fantastic helper in Amanda Ravelin who has set some stuff up for us. You can see a tiny little face birds there. So we'll be broadcasting from that perspective, but for some reason the microphone which we're having to use in my funky little swivel is not.
It still adjusts the camera though, so feel free to pass it along so we get a good view.
Etc. We'll at least pass this around like a techno-conch here, I guess. And we'll see how that goes. It's always fun to try.
And if you speak up, we'll be able to hear you on this end. So very soon we'll have some people from the QSite conference joining us, and we're also broadcasting live, and we have 3 people watching. So hello, those people.
There we go. We've got 3 people who've joined in so far. Cool. So I'll put that there for now. Cool. All right. So with that, I don't think Larry really needs a whole lot of introduction.
Yeah, but I'd like to meet these folks.
Yeah.
I'm going to go quickly around.
Let's do that. Sure. Yeah. Okay. So be Larry with an idea of maybe a bit about background.
What you do, everything that you could tell us about yourself is basically 2 books.
You're right, Matt.
I'm Zach Rowe, the Service and Question Manager for It's a whole bunch of learning experience about getting information and that's online.
My name's Scott Chester. I'm a little bit of a fraud because I know nothing about education. I'm a journalist, hence know nothing about education. I write about tech stuff.
Pass that around.
Yeah.
Make sure. Okay.
Hi, I'm Laurie Sagany-Green. I'm actually a deputy principal in a primary school, and I've recently been doing some tutoring at PUT. My interest is that I'm one of 3 directors in the company that's sponsoring this afternoon's PUT, but I'm also someone who has gone on a very steep learning curve as far as finding out more about being online and being a connected educator. So this is where I'm at the moment.
My name is Barbara Aston. I'm also one of the directors on Educorp. Started out as a primary school teacher in South Australia, and then I moved into adult education. So I was manager of flexible learning at Royal Melbourne Institute of TAFE, then went to the National Training Authority, and then set up a company in 2003. So now I'm the director of 3 my own, which is consulting and learning business in Melbourne. There's one Educorp and then another IT startup in Melbourne. So I'm interested right across all of the education sector.
My name's Claire Lanyon. I'm an independent consultant around learning technologies and digital content. So that's a pretty new journey for me. My most recent role was at Apple, where I was responsible for working with schools to really assist them in transforming teaching learning.
My friend is Snebo. I'm an e-learning consultant and developer with a little small business that sort of does e-learning for different sectors, schools, RTO, TAFE, university, not-for-profit, retail, that type of thing. So I guess I've benefited in terms of running a business that has a privilege of working with education providers and others in trying to get educational experiences, not just content, online.
And you're a teacher as well, right?
Just get right.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm Adrian Gregg. I'm currently a grade 1 teacher up at Mullaney State School, some since we go. But previously, I was project officer of the Department of Information Technologies, doing a lot of professional development education thing. I still do that on the side, so to speak, in the state school system. And previously, was on an advisory board for the Horizon report last year for the university. So very good decision back in the university.
Just can I just jump in one other thing? If you can maybe use your teacher voices a little bit. Most of us here have to say that.
Hi, I'm Samantha Harrington-McPeter, most recently on Old State Library as a learning coordinator and now at UT as a learning designer for the Learning and Teaching Transform program. Just started last Tuesday.
My name is Bob Rogers. I work for Education Queensland, Department of Education Training and Employment, as they call it. I used to be working with Adrian. I'm still a principal project officer working with the Emerging Learning Technologies team, so looking at all the emerging learning technologies and how they might be useful in education.
Hi, I'm Christine Kelby. I teach part-time at Oregon State College, and also out of the college I've set up a contemporary learning hub, which is a professional learning centre for teachers across the state. Apart from that, one of my hobbies is app design, so I'm teaching myself how to design apps, and my long-term goal is to have several apps in the app store.
Debbie Okada, I'm with Brisbane Public Education, servicing about 55 schools and also providing strategic direction of learning for our system. So my role involves strategically working with principals and teachers. Don't get kids with the diversity. How do I use technology effectively?
I'm Jane Cow. I'm the Director of Regional Assets and Public Libraries at State Library of Queensland, and one of our key roles is enabling public libraries to be technology trendsetters. So we're really interested in what children in general who use public libraries from 2012, what they're interested in, what they're using, so that the public libraries can help in that area.
Hi, I'm Linda Pitt. I used to work here at State Library of Queensland up until last week as their Executive Manager for Learning and Participation. And as of 3 days ago, working now at Apple as Development Executive here in Queensland. So similar to what Claire was saying, supporting schools with transforming learning using Apple technology.
Hi, I'm James Croft. I'm a freelance edtech developer, and I also write a podcast at reckoner.com.au. Actually, as of next week, I'll be working for Tech Queensland. So,
I'm Prashant Pandey, Director of Content Development at State Library of Queensland here. I'm responsible for the full content lifecycle as well as content operations here. My passion is technology, full stop. Everything to do with technology.
Hi, I'm Phil Long. I'm the current acting Pro Vice Chancellor at the University of Queensland for Learning and Technology, and the Executive Director of the Innovation and Analytics Group. and also run the QX edX implementation on campus. And sit on their board and had a little bit of dealings with the Johnson over there, having had the privilege of being on the board with him for a couple of terms.
And I just interject and say thank you to Phil because I used some of your writings in my interview to get a job at QUT. Thank you for your analytics.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Yeah, so Phil undersells himself. He's chair emeritus of the NMC. He also was instrumental in helping us come to Australia to begin to do the work that we do here. So it's been part of, she can't even remember, a long time. 2 terms.
6 years.
Yeah.
All right. Amanda just suggested that because the swivel can swivel, instead of having it over here, we'll stick it in the middle of the table, and then it'll follow everybody around.
Okay.
I'll let you know. That should help. Sorry, we're rearranging here as well.
Okay. Put that there, and I'll have to shift the gong.
Okay. So am I going to get gonged?
You have 14 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, it's ticking quickly. So Jonathan asked me to just take about 15 minutes to set the stage for our conversation, and so I've got just a couple of points that I want to make, and also want to just share some things that, if I put this up as kind of background, this is a painting that was done at the University of Bologna. It was painted in about 1200. That is Henry of Germany lecturing to the class there. This morning I gave a keynote over at QSITE, Equipment 50, I guess is what it's called. And it reminds me a lot of that because we had the same guy in the back asleep. The people on their devices, engaged in whatever they were engaged in, a couple of people talking in the back. This was the first Western university, and it really established the tradition that we continue to follow in pretty much all of formal education, at least in the Western world, but also in most of the world. A couple of weeks ago, I was in Spain, and I was at the Universitat Rivoli Virgili in Tarragona, and I got to visit their books library, which includes books that predate the printing press, hand-transcribed books. These were all actually printed books from the late 1400s, and it really struck me when I was standing in that library that what I was looking at was 15th century ICT. Seriously, that what we need to understand as we go through our endeavors is that we've been endeavoring to get good at communicating with people for a long, long time. 2 days ago, I was at Macquarie, and I went to their library, where they have a ACRS system. That thing is about 150 meters deep. It's 5 stories tall. There's a robot that runs up and down that corridor there and pulls the boxes out that have the books in about 2 seconds. It's incredibly fast, and there's 7 of these rows there. It'll hold 1.5 million volumes. And to have the 2 experiences, ancient library and uber modern library in space of 10 days, it just kind of struck me. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you for no particular reason. We just released about 2 weeks ago the global K-12 report, which you can download at this URL. And I think Jonathan already sent it out to everybody. And that's what we're going to be talking about a little bit. This project started off as an internal project at NMC, basically for us to just be aware of what was going on. But it became so popular with the folks that participated in it. They really encouraged us to start publishing it, so we did. And it has grown unbelievably, particularly since we came to Australia. And Phil was on the board when we decided to take this project globally. And now we have between 10 and 12,000 downloads every single day. every single day. So when we released the report at the NMC Summer Conference a couple of weeks ago, we decided to grab a snapshot of the downloads, the footprint of the downloads in the first hour after the release. And this is just the last 1,000. And the reason why you don't see quite so many down here is because it was the middle of the night. But there were still people downloading it, nonetheless. And of course, in the time zones that were concurrent with us in Europe and the US, there were tons of them. We published 42 editions in the 12 plus years that we've been doing this. But for the first 6 years, there was only one edition a year. And so we added every year. Now we're doing 14 editions a year. And we do 6 that have a broad focus. I'm really pleased to say, Phil, you may not know this, but we are going to have a library report out in August, next month. And also in September, we're going to be releasing the European Schools Report, which was done in collaboration with the European Commission. And they're going to translate that report into 28 languages. So it's just grown like topsy. It's unbelievable. And then we're doing individual reports that we call technology outlooks for individual countries, and we've done about 20 of those so far. And we're doing our research in about 65 countries right now. So you can follow the project most easily with this hashtag. And let's see. Get that the other way. Yeah, there you go. It's on the screen. NMCHZ, just follow that and you'll be part of a conversation that people participate in all over the world. You'll hear first about the release of Horizon reports there. But also it's a place to communicate back to us. If you're interested in being on the advisory board, send us a direct tweet, or if you have questions, send us a direct tweet. We watch it all the time. If you have a project to share, that's the best place to do it. So keep that in mind. We use social media extensively in that project, and this hashtag is the center of that. Now, people ask us a lot of times, what's the secret behind the Horizon project? And I'm going to credit Bill Gibson, who wrote Neuromancer, although he didn't really inform the work from the beginning. He had an interview with the Atlantic magazine about 6 years ago, and he made a comment that has stuck with me ever since, because it really does kind of capture the secret of the Horizon report. And his comment was, he was asked, about how to think about the future, and he said, what you need to understand about the future is that it's already here. It's just unevenly distributed. And that's basically what it is. We look elsewhere to see what's happening. So we're interested in what's happening in business, industry, and entertainment, and gaming, and in other sectors of education. It's why we started looking at schools. We used to only do universities. It's why we've added museums, because there's interesting things happening all over. And when they begin to gain traction, you must know this from your work as a journalist, they're going to move in ultimately into education. And so you see a lot of tablets around here. Those definitely were and are a consumer item, but they've become popular in education because people use them in the rest of their lives. So in the last 18 months, partly as a result of our collaboration with the European Commission, we've really rethought the Horizon report, the Horizon project, in significant ways. And we've decided to foreground trends and challenges in a discussion of them in a way that I think makes the report much more relevant and engaging, and certainly makes it a lot more fun to write. We still have the technologies in there. We spent about 18 months working through this. And we've added peer review and editorial board and a bunch of other things to try and just be responsive to the fact that we have all those dots on that map. Our readership, our downloads are approaching 4 million a year. 4 million downloads. I wish we charged a dime for one, but we don't. We give it away. And so that's the thing. So anyway, I'm going to look at one dimension of this right now, because today we're going to focus on challenges, but I recommend you take a look also at the trends. Interesting way to look at this, but we came up with a little rubric for how to think about challenges that we found to be very useful. And it's not a matrix, even though it appears to have 2 dimensions. It's really got 2 characteristics. So a challenge can either be understood or not understood, and it's a continuum. How well do we understand the challenge? Do we know the boundaries of it? That's a useful thing to know about a challenge. The second thing is, are there solutions that exist to the challenge? Because sometimes there are, but they're just, you're just not doing them, but other people are. And so if a challenge both is understandable and solvable, we consider that to be a solvable challenge. And it's really just a matter of will if we can implement a solution for it. And the lens that we've chosen to look at in the report, and maybe we might pass these around at this point. I don't think we have enough for everybody, but if you've got the report electronically, you already have.
Yeah, so you may have already downloaded it and have it on your tablet, or we have some hard copies of the 2 wicked challenges. So there's 10 of these, so you can take one of each.
Yeah.
We'll go your way.
If you don't have it, pick one. So I'm just going to run through the other levels of challenge really quickly, and then we'll set up the wicked challenge part. In the solvable challenges part for schools, there were 2 that were identified, and I thought they were very interesting, because I would have considered that the blending of formal and informal was something that we really hadn't got a handle on. There are institutions that are very good at informal, museums in particular. But most of the learning that we do in our lives, 88% of our lives, is in that informal category, only 12% in schools. But our expert panel really felt like that there was enough collaboration going on, and enough models about that we really do understand how to do it. And there are lots of examples of how it's being done. So it's really not an issue if people wanted to do that. They just need to start to do it. And the same with personalizing learning. You just need to go into a 3rd grade class to realize that we know a lot about personalizing learning. We're just not very good at it in high school or university, but we're great at it in primary school. And how is it that we are not great at it all the way across? The second category are challenges that we understand, but we don't really have solutions for yet. And so a couple of these, and the first one is really important here in Australia, is the public concern about privacy, is redefining things that would be relatively simple to solve until you start layering a lot of privacy expectations on top of them, and then they become incredibly difficult. And so while we may understand them, because of the additional focus on privacy, we don't have solutions yet. And you can think of all sorts of things. Related to that, one is BYOD. That we'd like to do that, but there's a lot of privacy concerns about it. The second one in the difficult challenge part is we have a lot of great teaching innovations out there, but we don't know how to scale them. So you can go to any school and there's going to be a bunch of teachers doing amazing things. But the next school over, it doesn't know a thing about it, and vice versa. And so we understand how to scale teaching innovations, but we don't really know how to do it yet. And then the final category, the focus that we're going to look at today, is, and actually both of those were good questions to chew on. These are even tougher. And I'm going to take
for the really tough one.
Yeah. So the second one is the one I'm going to focus on first. The notion of keeping education relevant is really, if you read the full text of it, the idea is keeping education relevant in the public debate. And what's happening is that we're seeing political leaders and policymakers and other parts of society making a case for education to be things that it historically has not been. Historically, public education has been about creating an informed citizenry. It's the Jeffersonian definition of public education. More and more, it's about the workforce, and it's being discussed in terms of the workforce and in terms of workforce needs, at the expense, in the last 20 years, a lot of things, including the arts, humanities, and other aspects of other disciplines that just aren't deemed to be as important to the workforce. And so there's real public policy implications here. As a result of all of that, we're seeing new models of education coming in saying they can do it better. And in some cases, given the fact that the metric is about the workforce, they do. And or if the goal is more kids through the high-stakes test, there are people that can do that really well. Some of them scoop the cream of the crop out of the schools and work with the best and the brightest. And so it's not hard for them to look at. So we're going to chew on those. In my last couple of minutes, though, I'm going to leave you with some thoughts about where things are going with technology. And I've just read this book, The Second Machine Age. I really recommend it. One of the points they make in there that is interesting to me is that we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of Moore's Law. And I'm sure everybody's heard about it, but the paper was published in April 1964 that basically made the case that every 18 months or so, we'd see that the number of transistors we could fit on a chip would double and the cost would drop by half. And since then, 50 years later, that has been documented over and over and over and over again. And experts and engineers and others feel like that we can count on that to go forward for at least another 5 years and maybe another 10 with a great level of certainty behind that. So this is just out to the 2 to the 10. 2 to the 10 is 1,000 times more capacity than what you started with. And so that would have been 180 months or 15 years. And you can see the curve starting to get really, really steep. And I just want to kind of show how linear this relationship is. This is the capacity of hard drives. In 1980, they were 0.0001 of a gigabyte, and now we're routinely seeing terabyte and more size drives for $99, and they're just everywhere. This relationship, which is plotted logarithmically, is able to be replicated in all kinds of digital sorts of things. So supercomputer speed, residential internet download speed, except here in Australia, of course. But that's another story. Microprocessors, of course, hard drive efficiency, all of that. As you think about this, let me give you one little example. If you fully drain and recharge your iPhone every day, over a year it would use 2,000 watt hours or 2 kilowatts, which will cost you 24 cents to charge your phone every year. So just think about how we talk about batteries aren't improving as fast as other things. I think that's pretty remarkable. You can use your phone for a year for less than a quarter. It's really something. So one of the metaphors they use in the book is of a chessboard and the notion of going across the chessboard with powers of 2. So if you look at this, kind of looks like this: 50 years of Moore's Law. Turns out that every 18 months we're at 2 to the 32. Anyone, you can just throw that. Oh, math, I took math, 2 to the 32. 4.3 trillion times the capacity in 1964, which was prior to, that was when we were still doing I think it was Gemini was in 1964, early in the space race, predating the computer that took us to the moon, which had 1 kilobyte of memory hand woven with actual magnets in it. 1 kilobyte, weighed 75 pounds. They have it at the Smithsonian. You can see it. It's a thing of beauty. If you imagine that that computer that took us to the moon was like 2 to the 4, 2 to the 5 on this chessboard, we're now at 2 to the 32nd. Well, that's remarkable, and it's the reason why we have Siri, and we have real-time translation, and we have digital cameras, and we have supercomputers, you know, that we can carry around in our purses or backpacks, is the result of all of the capacity building that's happened over those 50 years. Now, here we are at 2 to 32. In 18 months, we're going to move to 2 to 33. That's going to add double this. 8.6 trillion times more will be the next jump. The next jump of Moore's Law is going to be 8.6 trillion times where we were when we started. Or if you look just from, you know, from where we are now, it's still a big jump. And the jump after that, looking at 36 months, is going to be 17.2 trillion times. You know, so we're really looking at the capacity of our devices is now literally on a vertical slope, so that the change every time it goes up is incredible. So when the tablet came out, nobody really thought, wow, it's amazing that we're able to fit all this stuff in a device that small. They didn't think about, yeah, that's 4.2 trillion times since 1964, you know. But what it means is really high quality cameras, it means really high quality video, it means really high quality screens, it means really high quality voice recognition, it means natural user interfaces, it's going to mean microfacial recognition and computers that understand your affect. These are all being developed right now in the real world, and they're coming to us, and we're just going to absorb them just as easily as we did GPS in our phones. Nobody thought that was remarkable because it was just so useful. That's where we're coming, you know. So I'm going to leave it with this little video. We don't have an audio cable, so maybe I can. Let's see here. Oh, okay. Let's do that.
James, can you roll that?
Does it have a water?
It's Bluetooth, but we've got a
With Bluetooth. Let's just see if it'll just play here. Okay. I'll start it again. This is a video clip from the Mother of All Demos with Doug Engelbart. Both Phil and I have had a chance to spend some time with Doug. Fortunately, he passed away recently.
A really essential part of what we have developed technologically is what does come through this display to us. And I'm going to start out without telling you very much about the program and just run through a little bit of the action that this provides. Okay, to talk about control devices, we'll use this overhead camera shot. And you can see the devices that I'm using. I use 3, and they're not all standard. We have a pointing device called a mouse, standard keyboard, and a special key set we have here. And we're going to go for a picture down in our laboratory in Menlo Park, pipe it up, to show you another point of view more about how that mouse works. Come in Menlo Park. Okay, there's Don Andrews' hand in Menlo Park. And in a second, we'll see the screen that he's working and the way the tracking spot moves in conjunction with movements of that mouse. I don't know why we call it a mouse. Sometimes I apologize. It started that way. We never did change it.
So that was 1968. So that was 45 years ago. And in that demonstration, Doug demonstrated, of course, the graphic user interface and the mouse, but also the network, the hyperlink, two-way video, audio conferencing, and a whole list of other things, which is why they call it the mother of all demos. But it's basically defined how we do computing for 45 years. And when I look at the video, it feels like I'm watching Forbidden Planet or some, you know, yeah, or, you know, some science fiction movie. In 1968, by the way, you know, one of the most popular TV shows was Lost in Space with Robbie the Robot. So it is of its era. And TVs really did used to be around like that. Not 9:16 and perfectly thin. The point here between the two, Moore's Law and where that's taking us, and the fact that the technologies that we're used to that were hard are 45 years old, nobody's really working on the next generation keyboard. Companies are moving away from desktops as fast as they can and away from laptops as well. And you know, we're going to see some very interesting devices start to emerge. So I'm going to close here and turn it back over to Jonathan, you know, but kind of revisiting these thoughts from Gibson and the fact that it's unevenly distributed. When we think about schools, how many of you know a kid in your family that's like this, that, you know, like a 1-year-old playing with, you can't keep the iPad away from them. You know, try. You're going to have a miserable day. You know, it's easier to just give the kid the iPad. So this is my grandson, and when I gave him this iPad, it was at Christmas when he was 1. He, you know, swiped and tapped until he figured out how it worked, and the light bulb came on. He went systematically through every icon on the device, and today he routinely sends me pictures. He FaceTimes me. You know, he knows how to do anything on this thing. I mean, the kid 4 years old, barely talks. You know? And certainly never read a manual. These are the kids that are going to campuses. He'll be in school in you know, 2 years. And so, anyway, this is my last thought about, you know, how we need to deal with this. And I think we need to be open. We need to take risks, celebrate when those risks have a downside and you know, we fail. We need to continue to be curious whenever we can. And one reason why I think this meeting is important is because of the diversity around the table. We need to seek out wisdom from people that are outside of our comfort zone. So we're not just reinforcing the things we have. I think that's where vision is. And then finally, I think ultimately, this is the goal of learning, is to make kids so excited about the world they live in, their mouths just drop in amazement. You don't really need a high-stake test. This is the metric. I don't want it right here. You know, you nailed it when you have that. So there you go.
Yeah, wow. So just segueing from Larry there, I guess we want to talk about the wicked challenges, the two that are in the Horizon Report today. And I hope that you feel confidence in yourselves and that you actually are here because you have some vision, you know, to share around this topic. So what I'd ask you to do is to visit our website now.
Okay. Take it away. Yeah, and while he's doing that, Maurice, would you pass those business cards on around the table that are right on mine there, right in front?
I do, absolutely.
So what I'd like you to do, we set up a today's meet for the next little period of our discussion. So if you go to todaysmeet.com/E20, when you go to a look like this, todaysmeet.com/E20, type in your name. If you haven't used Today's Meet before, then you can pop a message in there. So I've put some instructions in here already. Now I do this with students that kind of before. If you've never used like a back channel kind of a space like this, normally with students I have to give them about 10 minutes to play around and type in all these things in there. With this gathering, we'll probably need a bit more. You get the idea. So I have put some of the instructions in there. If you didn't get a chance to download or you need to re-download the Horizon Report, there it is there. We'll be looking at the challenges from page 28. You can see there where it says tasks. And I'll switch back over to one again. there's a couple of tasks that I'd like us to sort of spend this next little bit of time talking about. As Larry explained, these wicked challenges are the ones which we're really not sure how to approach or how to solve them yet. But I'm betting that there probably is some good ideas amongst this gathering. And so we'll probably spend about 25 minutes or so, where I'd like you to actually go to that source material. So we've got some of these printed out ones, if you would like, or you may have the digital version, as I said, of the two. Choose one. Okay, so what's that? Which pages are they? Yeah, so it's from 28 onwards, page 28 onwards, and right. 28 to 31. Yeah, I'm thinking the same engineers. So there's the two that Larry talked about. There's the keeping formal education relevant. That's the second one, and the first one is competition. Yeah, the competition with new models of education. So you might even just first of all want to spend the time reading that and going, well, what on earth does that mean? Larry explained a little bit about keeping the formal education relevant. The other one, just you might want to have a read through there for the first little period. And then I'll ask you to actually start a reflection investigation part. So you can see it there where it says the tasks. Now, you might just spend the time just writing your own definition of what that challenge is, maybe getting your head around it, and then you might have something to share with us afterwards. You might spend your time finding what's something that would need to change in education or the world at large for that problem to be solvable. Or you might spend your time investigating what's some kind of action we could actually take now. Not necessarily to solve it, but maybe there's a pre-step that could be investigated to start now. You might spend your time actually finding some real-life examples to share with us, because these are topics that we can't really even feel like we can solve yet. It might be actually nice for people to share some real-life examples for the rest of us to get our heads around. Or you may even actually find some real-life examples of things that are leading to solutions. So I'm not anticipating we'll have time for everyone to sort of find something with all of those, but you might just choose one. So the first thing you would do is choose one of the challenges, one of the wiki challenges to spend your time on. Then you would have a think, once you've sort of read through that, you would have a think about which one of them you might like to focus on, and you certainly could do more than one. Then once you've done that, you may like to find a couple of other people. You may like to work by yourself. We might actually get a larger group of people. We have these breakout spaces at the side and on the back. So I didn't want to sort of just say, oh, you must work in a group of 5 or whatever. So you can basically choose if you want to pair up, how you want to do that, or by yourself. And then the time now is 5. So if we spend about, say, 20 minutes or 25 minutes on that, we did have an end time of 5:30, which I would still like to hit, so that afterwards we can then have more catching up and sort of more informal chats. But if we spend about 20 minutes on that and then you come back and actually hear from you guys, and I would really appreciate it if you could, once if you type up your notes or you find some examples, all that kind of stuff, however it is that you share it back to the Today Meet. We'd really love to compile, even if we do it anonymously in the end, but compile some of your ideas into a report which is kind of at least beginning to address these wicked challenges. It would be fascinating to get some kind of mix of all your ideas together. So it might be that you can use whatever web tool you want, but maybe post a link if you can into the Today's Meet, or you can just type the text in. But also we haven't really had a chance for you guys to ask questions or anything of Larry. We can certainly do that at the end, but is there anything you want to, at this point, just before you really dive in, and you want to ask Larry particularly about the wicked challenges of the Horizon Report upstairs? I can see a lot of wheels already turning, people already jumping into the the task, so maybe we'll just leave you do that. If you need to jump up, grab other drinks, there's the bar, whatever, of course, feel free. And we'll do that in 20 minutes or so. Thanks, everyone. Great class.
Easiest classes.
Somebody wants to talk to somebody else. I want to talk about keeping education relevant. So if somebody wants to talk about that.
Larry, in this thing here, like if you read the first paragraph, it says society's expectations are blah blah, wanting different things, you know, in the overview. The reality is, though, that the politicians are saying back to basics and all of those sort of things. You know, over in America, you had your No Child Left Behind. We've got our NAPLAN. So even though you might say society's expert, you know, from the point of view of the politicians and the newspapers, which promote what the politicians say, it's all about back to basics and everything else. So it's not really, to me, I don't think that it's really the expectation that we want to have all the things that we're saying here. What's your take
My
on
view on it is that, you know, not that long ago, in the U.S. at least, only 30% of the country graduated from high school. And a high school diploma was basically your union card to get into the workforce. Today, 30% of the population graduates from college and 100% graduate virtually from high school, and no one can get a job if all they have is a high school diploma. So I think that on the surface, it's true that the expectations for education have changed. You have to have a college degree now if you really want to, have a real job, a good job in the workforce, unless you receive some very sophisticated technical sorts of training. So that's my take on it. I think that society's expectations continue to change. Certainly the political debate drives a lot of that. You can agree or disagree with what people say about it, but schools change.
I think also it's education of the parent community as well. So I think you've got the economy there, but they know no different education to what they've gone through as well. So even though you have that in play, my thinking is, how do you go back to something? How do you go back to basics? We're actually living today, so you shouldn't be going back to an old era. You should actually be teaching them for today. So, what are you achieving?
That's kind of my take on it as well. Do we really want to go back to a time when only 30% of people graduated from high school? I don't think so. That was back to that.
I agree, but I'm just saying that that's the reality in society. Our politicians are pushing schools to say you've got to get better NAPLAN scores. So
right. That's perhaps teaching to the test.
Yeah. It's all about rankings on PISA, and it's about how politically the view is, where are we sitting in comparison to the rest of the globe, and so therefore it's low-level things that are being tested rather than high-order thinking and collaboration and other elements which are being, in any conference or forum, that they are the skills that are being promoted, but they're not being measured, I suppose, in a schooling sense.
That's part of the challenge. I mean, the debate's come on for ages about how do you measure something like critical thinking? How do you measure something? And like a lot of the vendors, like the educators, the companies, I think of Microsoft, Apple, Google, they all have their own versions of it. That what they call the wheel of success. I think it was they talk about all things that they wanted a potential future employee to have. Two of them were technical skills. All the rest are things like critical thinking, getting on with others, and all that sort of stuff. So, but from a political point of view, you can't measure that. You can't go back to the electorate and say, "Hey, we've got increase in critical thinking skills and creative problem solving." That just doesn't happen. So that's
but that's the story. I think
that can be a challenge.
Yeah, I think though that one of the key things then for the education community, is that we need to change the metric, or we need to change the story. So how do we influence the metric? And I think if there's research and evidence, and especially like if the kindergarten person or the person starting grade 1, we're teaching for the job that's today, it won't be there by the time they're in year 12.
It won't be there in 2 years.
So and the child, to me, it's not about relevance to the politician, though I think we have to do something there and influence the metric. But it's about relevance to the child, because we will have far more young people just leaving the system because it's not relevant, or exiting it by their mind because they're not actually attending. They might be there because they have to be there, and mum and dad know where they are, so they have to be there, but they're actually not engaged at all because it's not relevant to them. And I think what we
need to teach is around that confident learner. What I want people to be is a confident, continuous learner who can collaborate. Sort of, and so I want to be teaching programs in kindergarten in the library where they come for the story time. Surely I can do that. It's just another language.
And I think all of those things are articulated, aren't they, in the Melbourne report. But those things I think are all really clearly articulated in the Melbourne report, and that they're the outcomes, the learning outcomes that are needed. But all of those things are scaffolded against those economic outputs. I think you mentioned that in terms of it is about the economy and what the end result is, what the net result is in the community, and it's from that Melbourne report we've got things like NAPRAN and those measuring those metrics and how we can how do we measure that and how do we scale that, and I think
and influence that.
Exactly, and this is how do we shape the political landscape to have other outputs that are perhaps more desirable, that also meet obviously those other those other broader issues such as economic development and enrichment.
I think that's referenced in the actual report itself, like the European Union talking about lifelong learning as part of their primary goal, and that's the political push. And so if you can see that as a political push, then that's how you make the change. But until that's actually valued or seen as a valuable input, then changing the story is going to be the challenge. And that's how do you do it? How do you get the people who are in charge, who have the power and the authority, and unfortunately the cash that goes with it, to actually take that on board themselves as well, unless you can tell them those critical stories.
That's right, and then shape the next statement and whatever the next report might be.
I guess if there's a way that you could have a metric on return on investment out of creativity and problem solving, then we'd just be winning. If they could, as you were just saying, and Adrian was saying about cash, it's about investment. And we're thinking about, yes, it's a literacy score and numeracy score and blah, 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 but at the end of the day, it's investment and education, it's cash, it's money. So if there was a way to somehow articulate the metric in terms of return on investment and social economic output in terms of creativity and problem solving and put a dollar sign against that, that may be part of that changing of the story, rather than just nice, lovely, fluffy stories about how kids have been creative and then they've been creative in their jobs. That's nice, but at the end of the day, unless if there's some dollar signs against it, that might be useful.
Then is the formal education the only way to get to that point? So the wicked problem is keeping the formal education relevant. Goes with the premise that it is something we're just trying to make sure that it is relevant. So there are other mechanisms like informal education. The wicked problem should just be keeping education relevant.
I think it's perhaps keeping educators relevant, isn't it?
That might be.
Because we can all self-direct.
One has to look at the question, if you're going to do a variety of different non-formal things, what's the social cost of not having a shared experience? Because a lot of what we do in that process is really a socialization process that's imposed, that's passing down cultural values, that's passing down ethical values and such. As you fragment, to what extent can you make sure, maybe as a community, does that matter to you? And maybe that diversity is considered good. The other point I wanted to make, though, is there are countries that are looking at metrics about well-being and happiness and things as measured as alternative metrics, if you will, for country growth.
New Zealand, by the way, is #1 on the list.
And Finland is up there.
Yeah. Finland's too cold.
I reckon that whole, and I'm not an educator, although in media we're having this wonderful era of retrenchments, and my plan B when they sacked me as a journalist was to become a teacher, because I figured,
and then you met this.
Then I met teachers. I think the challenge for us all, be it we're teachers, or be it we're journalists, or be it we're parents, or whatever,
or
librarians, is how the hell we all keep up with this stuff. We've had 10 years of Facebook, and we just got our heads around the fact we all had to be friends with people we don't really know and don't really like. And our kids are going to be using all this stuff, and now our kids aren't using this because that's where mum and dad is. They don't want to be on Facebook. They're Snapchatting each other, and God knows what they're Snapchatting. Yeah, it's been 5 years since the iPhone was created. No, sorry, 7 years since the iPhone was created. And the changes that has, and we're just still trying to get our heads around what all that means. But the kids we're teaching, or you're teaching, I'm writing stories to, are always kind of one step ahead of us. I think that's the big challenge. It's a challenge in our industry for newspapers. Newspapers are typically large organisations, like big ships, which are trying to turn quickly when we're competing against rowboats that can turn quickly. And teachers have that challenge. I mean, we all went through, I guess, university and whatever at a different time. When I went from university here, I lived in a house that didn't have a phone. We didn't have sexting. We wrote letters, drew pictures, and it didn't work really well because we could draw stick figures. So that's the challenge of our generation. We're teaching kids who know the stuff better than us, and that stuff's constantly changing. And I don't know how you guys do it.
But to me, sort of what we want a good digital citizen to understand that Google's not magic. I see my nephews, I see, sort of quite a lot of young people who think that it's all magic. Now, you and I understand, and most of us understand how a combustion engine works. We might not be able to fix it, but we understand it's not magic. My problem is there's a lot of the community, sort of between 12 and 24, who just think it's magic and always right. Yeah. So it's about that, and they don't understand that if they Google it here and Google it in Ukraine, they'd get a different outcome. Yeah. So it's about building that digital citizenship, that digital understanding, and that basic knowledge of how a computer works and basic knowledge around computer language. And yes, a teacher doesn't have to know. No longer do we need a teacher to be the expert. We need the teacher to be able to facilitate the thinking and the learning, and the child will do the learning. So it's not about downloading knowledge anymore, even though, I really wish that they did know that the Aboriginal and Torres Strait people here were here first and didn't have to go home, So, sort of some of those more ignorant, sort of things that get perpetuated because people don't know. But the thing is about finding out and checking and, sort of doing that. So I think that's the most important thing that we can impart to our kids.
Just what I'm hearing is that it's the tacit knowledge of technology, the tacit understanding, and the ubiquitous nature, and that it's in every part of their life, as is ours. That it's being able to scaffold learning in a way that is received as well.
And then we have to measure it and see what is the impact on our social community around the benefits. So how do we actually put that into a metrics to influence the funders? Because that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, but I think the learning has changed the political landscape at the moment in terms of those decisions back to basics are really due to the voting mum and dads who are out there from all different parts of society. And, if government and policymakers were listening to like the reports from the CEO report, which is that 1,500 CEOs, the IBM report, they say clearly there to navigate the future, creativity is number one. Mm-hmm. Now, if politicians are listening to those groups, then we wouldn't have an issue. But politically, that's probably suicide for a lot of them in terms of that. And therefore, they're going to listen to mum and dad who may be still attached to the way that they were taught and the way that they learn, and they turned out okay. And they may not think the world's going to change as rapidly as we do. So I think that's a challenge. I believe that's a challenge in changing who our policymakers listen to and how we educate the mum and dads, in society to be up with it. What are the key areas of literacy and how we can be ready for the future. And at the moment, I think there's quite a diverse gap.
Well, according to politicians, we need Latin in the schools rather than computer programs.
Sorry?
We need Latin, apparently. Yeah, you're right. There's this disconnect between, I guess, what those of us who are comfortable with technology and whatever, and and I don't think that's just education. I think that's lots of areas.
So therefore, how do we engage the politician and the parent?
Well, I don't think we're very good at selling our story. I don't think our schools are very good at selling stories. I think what happens is we always go for the negative. We actually don't go for the positive. So I think we're taking.
So when I look around this room here, like a number of educators who work for many years and fantastic innovative stuff, and there's probably a little bit of variation in terms of how much people have been able to share that. There's restrictions, etc. But by and large, there's a lot of the people here have actually been involved in telling those stories, etc.
But have we been only telling them to ourselves?
How do we get students to tell the stories? Like, how do we get them talking about it and selling it and actually having agency in their world to be doing something? We can use these words continually, but they actually need to be enacting them and actually getting them out there.
That was one of the things with EduTech and the big conference that happened in Brisbane just a couple of weeks ago. Like, there was nearly 5,000 people at that conference, but over the 2 days I kind of walked around and spoke to as many people as I could. And the sense I really got was that there's people that are there getting the information they need and the social support they need and the technology tips and the kind of kind of endorsement and encouragement and inspiration they need are kind of already in that world. Like, those people who really need that stuff can't get to things like that, or don't have the time, can't be backfilled in their classes. So yeah, to a certain extent I agree. I think sometimes there is, like, it's really only if you've gotten to something like this once, then you keep on going, and the people who really need those messages, But is technology overcomplicating the actual issue? Because I believe that education and learning should be technology agnostic, because it keeps on changing. So yes, you might have iPad today, and you might teach somebody on iPad. There might be another technology that's just around the corner that might be coming in. But the underlying principles, like we were talking about, moving from Twitter's feed to your own letters, that was just a channel, but the actual goal was communicating. So going back to principles, and not in that sense, but in terms of what is the outcomes that we want out of education and learning, technology just fast tracks or makes it much more conducive to different environments, but the underlying principle remains the same.
And I think one of the fantastic things, I didn't say this before, Larry, but one of my favourite things about the 2014 report is the way that it has moved the focus from the 1 to 2 years time, like the time frames of the technology being at the start, to actually being after the issues and the challenges. It's still, obviously a crucial part of the report, but we've spent a little bit of time already talking just about technologies and people's perception of it, etc. But let's get back to that idea that actually the challenge is much more the universal kind of thing. So that's my way of saying let's get back on task.
So let me help with that. So
in terms of choosing your challenge and going with that.
One of the reasons why this is a wicked challenge is because I think it's easy to brainstorm solutions, but we don't actually even really know what the problem is. And so the solutions are kind of irrelevant until we can understand it, but we've got to try and do some things at the same time. I just keep thinking about the notion here is keeping formal education relevant in a world where if you know what you're doing, you can find the answer to anything instantly. You can find the source, the original source for just about anything instantly. Not everybody, but I can. And I do all the time. If I want to learn something, the last place I'm going to go is school. I'm just not going to. That's not efficient for me. That's a piece of this, is that are there other ways to learn that are more relevant than formal? Is that part of the problem? Is that a problem? I don't know for sure that it is. And so thinking about that formal aspect of it, I mentioned that traditionally, or not traditionally, but generally, people spend 12% of their life in school learning, and the rest of their life, 88%, they learn some other way. They learn from each other, they read, but they don't go to school. So in that sense, if we live in a world where you can find out just about anything you want to know on the internet, if you know how to search for it, what is the role of school?
Well, that's where Phil Long's comment earlier resonated, that social cost.
There you go.
So that's absolutely, I have had students who wouldn't turn up to my lecture, but would absolutely turn up to the tutorial. And it wasn't, again, to hear me harp on for an hour and a half, but it was to then unpack and talk and bond and share and network and do all of those social things that the lecture wouldn't provide. And we could have done that in a web conferencing platform, but the convenience of being all in the room and very easily being able to share, but also that intimacy of having physically knowing somebody and that shoulder to lean on in a physical sense. Because I asked them, why do you come to my tutorials but not my lectures? And they said, oh, not really to see you, but that's okay. But to see one another, and it was that social aspect that was really critical and key. And these are the same students that are, would sit there and quite happily have a very strong, robust virtual life, but really appreciated the physical sense.
I don't know how it is here in Australia, but in the States, homeschooling is the fastest growing session of education. And when you talk about that, none of them are. And I talked to an HR manager at HP who was commenting about this, what the workforce needs. And he says, well, we go to the best universities in the world. We hire the smartest, brightest people we can find. And you know why we fire people? Because they can't work in groups, because they're not culturally sensitive, because they're not able to share ownership of a task with somebody else. Those sorts of things, the kinds of things you were talking about, that are soft skills. And I hung on to that for a long time because I was thinking, we don't do any of that. Well, in primary school, we do. We should just make primary school be the way we do it.
Majority of companies before recruiting have those psychometric tests and analytical skill ability tests that are actually mandatory in lots of companies. You have, once you have passed the first round of interview, I think your skills have already been kind of assessed, so you are there. They just want to see those soft skills, whether that person can work with the culture of the company, rather than crunch some numbers, even if it's an accounting job.
Queensland had a wonderful play-based curriculum that somehow or other we lost the arm wrestle in the ACARA. And if the play-based curriculum was the starting point for all primary and right through, that would meld with everything that is desirable in the whole premise of playing with. Just like the 4-year-old gets the tablet and the hole in the wall is about the playing process, and we lost that very valuable
role play of the kids playing and negotiating.
That was very much a solution already that we lost, but that's a brief fact.
So how do we show that that's an important part and needs for job skills? Sort of it's that. And see, I do notice that Jackie Tran, who's the head of the education committee, do you know what I mean? Like as a politician.
Sure,
so,
I suppose it's not the same.
Hear this
Don't have that
I know in our Catholic department that
you wouldn't get it, but
that framework, their framework is still very strong. So we actually say recruitment is actually only just the content and your teachers, pedagogy, whatever drives and how they put it together. So I think it's just how the different systems have rolled it out.
I think so
think you're
too.
straight, whereas for us it's not like that. So that's not the issue.
So in terms of formal, because I'm not an educator, so in terms of formal education and informal, sort of learning, which is most of our lives, The difference is the certificate, isn't it? It's the accreditation. So a third party needs to accredit whether or not you can do something. Is that the, the major philosophical difference? And is that what we need to say? Is that still relevant?
In some fields, it's like I'm thinking of Microsoft certification or Cisco certification, way more valuable for people in those fields than college. Yeah, because they're really looking for people that know how to do
stuff.
But that's still, I would consider as a formal education pathway.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I agree.
Yeah. So that, I think that definition holds for that.
It's important. I was just thinking back on your comment, Larry, and I've heard this from Stephen Downs and other people as well who are accomplished individual learners, and often very passionate advocates for that approach. But it's kind of, I think we have to be careful about advocating an approach that skilled individual learners have developed over time and projecting that out to people that don't have a lot of the fundamental background, competency, confidence, persistence, grit, and the rest of those attributes that come together to make those fundamental individuals' learning skills as effective as they are. And so one of the things that we somehow between 4th and 5th grade and, I don't know, maybe 11th, 10th, 9th, 10th grade, something happens besides puberty. Although that may be a big part of it. That results in a lot of individuation and a lot of difficulty in remembering or figuring out the process as a collective process. And maybe that's necessary, but I wonder for those people who are teaching in that space, because I get them at the other end, right? And I get them and learning is a consumer transaction at this point, which is incredibly frustrating. It's not assessed, it's not going to be paid attention to. If you don't tell me where the information is, then I can't apply the instrumental knowledge, and it's my fault. And those are the kind of kids I'd just as soon walk away from. I've got better things to do. But it is the majority. So somewhere in that, for those of you that are in that 4th through 10th, tell me what's going on. Because I don't know what's happening there, but something is.
I mean, one of the questions that I've got for this group is it important to know 2 + 2, how that is for, or that is for? I mean, we all drive cars. We are not mechanics. So do we really need to know the understanding when we have technology which can provide you the answers more and more?
Well,
so, I mean,
I think Larry kind of answered that earlier. I think he answered that earlier by talking about like you can access. I mean, the issue is if you can access everything and anything anywhere, then what's the point of school? So, like,
I think that's slightly different than what I'm trying to do.
And that's numerous. I mean, it's metacognition.
I think it's hard to generalize that. I think for some people the answer is yes. But we need people that do know advanced mathematics at the same time.
As Daniel said, there's still the thinking skills.
Yes, but it's being able to talk about, I think what we're missing is being able to
understand bigger concepts and how they fit together that you may not ever be able to do basic. I don't know, I'm just speculating.
So what if we change the focus just for a minute as a way of kind of moving maybe a little bit closer, but we've surfaced a lot of the issues and some of the ideas around solutions, but who do you know out there that's doing a good job that is competition for schools that you might highlight?
Well, I just bought a course online to learn how to program, and that was on udemy.com. Yep. That's basically kind of like a marketplace where any instructor can set up their own course and create their own materials.
Udemy.com?
Yeah, udemy.com.
Udemy.
And I think they're certainly a competitor to a lot of traditional skill-based organizations.
It's also Udemy is also a site where anyone, including teachers, if you have some skills, you can set up a course and start making money. So for us, it's even competition for our day job.
Yeah, it's disruptive in the fact that if you were very successful in that, then you could quit being a teacher here and
teach to a global audience of people who are truly passionate about what you're teaching.
I would suggest that the people that are engaging in such models are already fairly successful learners, so they know how to learn, they know, they've got that drive to learn. So I think our role in formal education is to give students that opportunity to be successful, to experience flow, to know what the rewards are with learning and feel it. And I actually think one of our biggest competitors is kids have such an easy access to be consumers at the moment. It's so easy when you're trawling the web to sort of jump on the career mail site and read something about something you never ever wanted to know about, but it's there. Or watch an episode of something, because it's always on demand. So I think part of our challenge is buying back the students' interest in learning. So they are going to use me about learning and investing their time in that instead of taking the easy option of, well, let's get entertained. Entertaining everywhere.
So your relevance is self-selected learning.
Yeah, they have to have a confidence to be self-selected.
The reality is, though, that even the unis and that, there's no reason to go to anywhere except to go to YouTube and say, how do I do this? And someone somewhere has made a video of it. So, if you want to learn how to dust your chooks for fleas, someone will show you how to clip the wings, no matter what you want to do. I want to make this sort of a cake. Someone's done it. So kids know that, and they know that there's a place, and if they are interested, they'll put something up themselves to show other people. And that sort of informal education is something that a lot of people are.
Well, that was sort of the first step for me, like I just did a YouTube search, found a bunch of videos on learning Objective-C and programming, and then I went, well, this course is $100 and has like 90 hours of videos that I don't have to chop and change between and really textualize everything I'm doing. It was like one continuous flow. So for me, that was like, it was cheaper and, it was worth my time.
That's why digital literacy is very important, knowing the trusted source. Because I had learned rose pruning using YouTube, but that was not a good source, so I killed my rose plant. So, you have to be, and that is something, you had those skills.
You should have watched the video again.
Sorry?
But I also think it's widening kids' horizons, so it's not just that there are so many rich sources with people that they can tap into. I don't think we're actually getting the full benefit of technology to transform learning, to actually get that story across. So people are going to new models, but
I want to take us in another direction, if I could, and mention another example, which is David Wiley's Open High School Utah. And the organizing principle there is that everything that they use across all of their curricula is shareable, remixable, and already existent, basically, in the open content universe. There's a lot of discussion when I was in the UK a couple of weeks ago. University libraries there are fed up with publishers they just feel like that they're never going to embrace open content. It's just not going to happen. And so they've begun publishing themselves. They've become publishers. And they're publishing the academic textbooks being used on campus so that they can be sure that they're published with an open license and all of that sort of thing. This notion of schools that separate their resource materials from the publishing world is tremendously interesting to me. Coming from a state like Texas, where fundamentalists basically pick our textbooks, and if you go to high school in Texas, you're going to learn about creationism right along with evolution. You're going to have the counterpoint to global warming is that other people don't believe it, and and this is the reality of the schools in the state where I live. Meanwhile, Open High School of Utah and David Wiley, they're really pulling in the best information that they can get from anywhere in the world. How many years has OC been going on? 12 years or something?
At least. It's just after Flat World Knowledge.
Yeah, so the whole notion of open content, even if we keep the form of schools, I think that as a business model, disassociating from publishers is where we're going to go, particularly as we move to digital content.
There'll always be a role for accreditation, though. I mean, you know, I can go to YouTube and I know how to replace someone's heart valve. I know that really well. I've seen all the YouTube videos that should I be allowed to. You know, I work a lot in the TAFE sector. You know, lots of people go to TAFE because it's attached to a pay rise. No credential, no pay rise. So, you know, and I'm an employer, I've got quite a lot of staff. Somebody sits across from me and says, I've seen a YouTube video on how to run a performance appraisal. I'm not even interested in that. I want to see some sort of formal education, which I can then use as a benchmark. So students being able to create their own content for certain things is good, but there has to be some sort of benchmark. Otherwise, it's not necessarily worth anything.
So is any new models of education, you know, sort of working with that, so that, you know, sort of it would be seen as a, you know, sort of a high level of accreditation that would be recognised formally by, you know, sort of
Of course,
job
there are
seekers?
MOOCs and, you know, people that accept a lot of the courses that are there are not formally credentialed at the end, is my understanding.
But I think there are models where you can actually pay that fees to get that assessed and credited.
Well, MOOCs still don't have, I mean, this is a big debate about whether or not, in doing so, are MOOCs moving away from the very interested audience that they have found. There's millions of people.
It comes back to the informal, formal thing.
Well, and that's part of it.
Informal is so much more attractive. But then, I guess, as Margaret's saying, it's that goal.
Yeah. How does, if you're preparing students in schools towards an adult working world, how does an employer know the benchmark? That's ultimately, there has to be some sort of accreditation or some sort of sets of rules and formalised processes, because you can go on Udemy or wherever you want to go and you could learn all the wrong things. You're talking about 2 + 2 = 4. I mean, I can get that with calculators and everything else, I can achieve that, but I can also make a very significant mistake in many fields that might cost someone their life. So there has to be some sort of benchmark that says, yes, this is quality and it is correct.
Well, some of those sites, I don't know to quite that level, but use, you know, a review system and kind of feedback system, so you can very quickly see from people who have asked, you know, who have commented, who have taken the course and commented, you know, much like an eBay review or anything like that, you know, is that any good or not? You kind of get a sense of it through that. But as for something that, you know, requires more critical skills and, you know, things that have much more weight than that.
Yeah.
I'm going to give just going to give a 5-minute call, everyone. Of course, we can hang around longer now, but 5-minute call is anything.
I guess you understand.
Final thing.
So the applying the learning to is going to be important with that, because at the end of the day, we want to be able to take that learning and do something with it. There are people on MOOCs just for the sake of being on MOOCs, just for pastime, but there are obviously people that want to be able to take that learning and apply it. And I look at my own, you know, one of my sons who's finished a journalism degree, and all the job placements at the moment aren't asking him about his degree. They're asking him about all his work experience. And, you know, journalism at QUT, for example, you know, have their students going out to lots and lots of placements. Because at the end of the day, he gets a job based on what the others are going to say and, you know, word of mouth around the industry. That's a graduate, you know what I mean? Around the industry, you know. I mean, when I first became a teacher, I mean, well, if someone said, hey, how's Derek been going in all the teaching phases, rather than looking at my original degrees first, because we didn't have a lot of placements in those days.
But there's other sorts of formalisation, like if you look at, say, take Queensland at the moment, their benchmark, their method of retrenching people is something called the suitability test, which is about to occur in the next few weeks. I don't think you have to do it, but it is an online test. It's an online profiling tool. Component of it is very much like the old IQ test that when I came to South Australia, we were still doing IQ tests on kids for a long time. But or luminosity, I suppose, and that sort of thing. So analytical skills, and then there is a very large segment on personal, commercial attitude because they have to become a commercial organisation. So that is another component, and then a 360 analysis. So the combination of those three are the formalisation of decision making of whether the person continues to work or not. So it's a benchmark.
Well, see, one of the challenges from that, and the idea of the new models for education, whether it's formal or informal, a lot of that comes down to, and you raised this about some of the people you saw at the conferences, is that they want to learn. And the challenge for me is that at the beginning of the schooling career, teacher grade 1, I can look at my class of kids and I can tell you that there's a significant portion don't want to learn, don't want to be there. The parents don't care. They have no interest whatsoever on what they're wanting to do or to achieve. You see that everywhere. A lot of the new models of education, a lot of them that I'm seeing, or examples of them, are ones where either the parents really want their child to be a part of that education program, or the child has a really distinct interest in a particular area of field. They want to be there. So again, you're preaching to the, like you were saying, you're preaching to converted. They're the ones you want because they're interested. They want to be there. Part of the challenge for myself and teachers who are out there, I think, is that how do you get all of the kids have that fire? I go back to that picture you had up there with that kid with mouth wide open in awe, and like, how do you get that reaction for all kids who maybe have never experienced it in their life? How do you get them to have that sort of a feeling of, I want to know more? And if I can do that with half the kids, I've done a good job today. And so that's the challenge.
That sounds like a wicked challenge and another wicked problem. So guys, I'm just aware about time. For those of you who may have other things to I don't know, planes to catch or
State of Origin to watch.
State of Origin to watch. Someone has to mention it. And in the interest of maybe keeping us all wanting more, we might sort of formally draw to a close. There's a whole wealth of things that you've been putting into the Today's Meet, and also people who've been watching in the Google Hangout have been putting into the Today's Meet to pour back over. I should have mentioned that stuff is only going to be up there for a week, and then it'll disappear. If you wanted to go back through that, that's your time frame. I guess let's just formally thank Larry for his but as I said, feel free, this stuff, once we get going, you really want to keep discussing it. So we'll turn the camera off in a second, but feel free to keep chatting and discussing over here after the while.
Thanks, everybody.
It's the end of the formal discussion. Thanks,